All right, so who's here for cloning, right? If I asked like everyone to tell me what cloning was, I bet like most of you would probably give me a slightly different answer, right? Okay, so let me see. Can y'all see that? Let me see. Hold on for a minute here. I'm a little unorganized getting going here. All right, so we're going to talk about cloning your GIS content. Now what we're talking about today is using the Python API to help you move content from one portal to another. And that can include ArcGIS Online to Enterprise, Enterprise to Enterprise, or Enterprise to ArcGIS Online. Any of those combinations is what we're talking about. Now, what we are here to not talk about is actually distributed collaboration. Do people know what distributed collaboration is? Some of you do. So that's how you set up trust between two portals, specifically between a group in each, and it starts to either one-way or two-way sync. What we're talking about here is sort of doing things that perhaps are above and beyond or outside the scope of that. I know many of you maybe have dev, test, prod scenarios, or maybe you want to move a whole bunch of content groups, users from one portal to another. So that's what we're kind of talking about today. And the Python API allows you to do some of that. All right, so I'm just going to kind of scroll here. Like I said, we're not here to talk about how you move a portal or an enterprise from one server to another server. All right, that's probably why most of you are here, right? Are there people here that want to learn how to do that? Like, how do I move it from one domain to another? Or my IT shop gave me a new server. Now I want to take all this and move it to that new system. We're not here to talk about that, so I apologize. However, we are here to talk about, well, maybe if you stood up Portal on this new system, then you could use methods like this to actually move most of the content over. Just so you know, we do have things on the roadmap to address those things I was talking about, though. So I'm not going to say it's coming in 10.7 or even 10.7.1. But we are going to make some of those processes easier. So I apologize, I'm not here to answer those questions for you. But hopefully you learned something anyway. So when we talk about cloning, really what we're talking about here is copying content between portals. All right, so what works well in this scenario? Web tier authenticated users. So if you're using IWA or something like that, what you may not know is as these users get created in Portal, we don't store the passwords for them. That's all done at the web tier, so it's very easy to copy users from one portal to another. It's very easy to copy groups and their sharing, hosted feature services, physically copying the data and moving it, web apps, web maps, and lots of other types. And recently, in the Python API, we also now copy hosted feature layer views, or the data that points to what that view points to. So that's something new that we'll talk about here as well. Things that don't work well. Copying built-in user accounts. You may say, why? Because I don't know what the passwords of those user accounts were. So if you're going to copy users between portals, you'll have to give it an initial password for those users to log in with, and then they'll be able to change it or something like that. Not that it doesn't copy well, you just have a password challenge there. Hosted tile services aren't cloned. Map services and image services, we only copy those by reference. If you copy the items, they'll point back to the original. Why? Because there's a lot going on behind a map service or an image service and all the data that goes along with it. There's also like some complicated story maps sometimes are difficult as well, just because of the way some of the URL links are composed. So how do we get started cloning information between portals, if we want to call it that, or copying data? Basically, we need a connection between a source and a target portal. What I'm showing you here today is a Jupyter notebook that's running in ArcGIS Notebooks, some of the new stuff that's coming out in 10.7. And this notebook assumes it has connectivity to both. Now, some of you are probably asking, hey, how can I export a whole bunch of data and save it to disk and move it to a disconnected environment? Well, we're not there yet, but that's coming as well. Did anybody have that question? All right, well, sorry to disappoint. I mean, it kind of put out a lot of disappointments up here up front. But basically, you need 2 portals. And then what I'm going to go through today is the first thing you want to do is worry about any custom roles you have defined and moving those guys over. Copying your users if that is something that you want to do. Copying groups and assigning the appropriate owner as well as membership. And then going through some cloning items, okay? So let's get started. So this is a live demo. I know y'all see a lot of notebooks where people scroll through it and cells have already been run and it looks really cool, but I'm gonna be very adventurous here and run stuff live, right? All right, so that works. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create my GIS connections, all right? So I have a source portal, and this portal here is gonna be my target portal. So I'm gonna create a connection to this source guy, which is actually a AWS instance for me. So let me see, let me remember my password here. I'm not as sophisticated as David was, so I'm going to have it prompt for a password and I got to type it in. All right, that worked. And then with hosted notebooks, in this specific case, once y'all get 10.7, when you open notebooks here, you don't actually have to type in URLs and username and passwords. You'll be able to use this special terminology called home. And what that will do is establish a connection to your home GIS or this home portal that you're running within. So that's kind of nice, all right? So I now have 2 variables, let's call it that, pointing to a source portal and pointing to a target portal, all right? So step 1, I want to copy any custom roles that I have identified. Now, why am I doing that first? Well, I'm doing that first is before I copy users and assign a role or privilege to them as I'm copying them, if I had custom roles defined, then I need to be doing that during the copy user process. So I'm going to go through and see if I have any custom roles identified first and copy those. So I'm going to run this cell here. And basically, you'll see a couple things here. You'll see this viewer, you see this data editor, and then you'll see something with data scientist. Now, in case you didn't know, I don't know how many of you are, kind of low level and write this kind of code, but a viewer and a data editor, they're not like a org user or org admin or org publisher. They actually have a special role ID. So these are built-in roles that come with Portal. This is my custom role that I'm dealing with specifically here in data scientist. So I've actually already copied that guy. And if I come over here and go to my organization, so this is my target portal. And I'm going to try to prove to you that things are really working. So I now have a role over here that I just copied over, and it's data scientist. So I've basically copied a role, created the same name, assigned all the same privileges to it. So now that role is in my target portal. So as I start to copy users, I can use that role if I want to. Okay, so let's move on to, let's look at copying users. So in my target portal, I have a number of users. All right, so you see these guys here. I have an administrator, I have an accountant, which is me. I'm Bill Major, by the way. I don't know if I said that up front or if you didn't look in the agenda. It's a little chaotic getting things going here. So I have a B Major guy, and I'm an admin. But then I have some other users here with random, it has some random roles and things like that. And then I'm going to just, do the same thing on my target portal to say, hey, what users do I have here? So I got, some users on my target portal already established. All right, so I have a method here. And one thing, I know a lot of you always ask, hey, is this notebook going to be available afterwards on GitHub or whatever? Yeah, we do post all this stuff. But a lot of this stuff I'm pulling from from our online documentation as well. Not to cheat by doing that, but I think it just, is easy for you guys to go back and reference. So I have a method here that's actually going to loop through all of my users. And it's going to call this create user. And basically it's going to do some things like get all the information for the original, like their username, their last name, the description, and all of that kind of good stuff. And then also when it creates the new user, it's going to kind of determine the role here. You see this role, a little bit of logic there. And that's basically keeping track of if a user had a custom role and then when I created that new one, to assign it that custom role as well. All right, so I'm going to run this guy, and so here we go. So now I'm going through and I'm creating all these users in my target portal. And I guess really to give you a real effect, I should have gone to the members page before I did that. But sure enough, I have all these new users now. They've just been created. You see this guy here, Brown Rogers. He got that data scientist role as I came in. So all of my users, I've now been able to migrate from my target or from my source to my target. All right. Now, a lot of times you may not copy users between portals. You know, that you may have users establish their own way, but I just want to go over that so you understand. Now, I'll try to do this one in advance. So right now I have no groups in this portal, right? All right. So let's move on to talking about how you could copy groups. All right. So again, I'm going to just simply list out from my source portal, hey, what groups do I have over there? All right, so here's some groups that have been created. So that's all fine and good. And then I have a method here. It's going to do kind of the same thing. It's going to basically, for each group, gather up a whole bunch of information about it, its title, its name, its description. And then when it goes to create the new group and the target, it's going to use all that same information to create that. All right, and then what it does is as I loop through each one, I then print out the group item as it's created, just so that we can see that it's been created successfully. So let's run this guy. So things are working, that's good, things aren't blowing up. If I come back over here now and refresh my portal, all these groups I just copied came over. All right, so how's the excitement level right now? Everyone feeling good? All right, only 2 people raised their hand on that, so bar is still kind of low at the moment. All right, that's cool. So now I've copied custom roles. I've copied users, if you want to do that. Now I've copied groups. All right, now I'm ready to start copying content. So why did I do roles, users, and groups first? Well, because content has to be owned by users and they have to be shared to groups. So you kind of have to get that structure in place, or it's just one way to approach it before you then start copying all of your items. All right, so now we're going to start looking at how you would copy data, clone data, whatever we want to call it. So there's this guy at this portal named B Major, and he's got a password. All right. And all I'm doing here is just listing out content owned by this user. So under this my user, content, I have some folders, and in that folder I have some image services, map services, I got hosted feature services, I got web apps, web maps. So we're going to look at how you can clone different different item types here. So let's look at an image service. All right, so I run this guy. I'm just getting the item ID so I can get a handle to this particular item. Now remember at the very beginning, one of the things I said that doesn't clone well are map services and image services. And what did I mean by that? It means the item will copy fine, but it will be pointing back to the original URL. So we're kind of copying by reference here, right? That's because I don't have access to all the imagery necessarily behind the scenes and where it's stored and all of that through the image service REST endpoint. All I know is, hey, there's an image service, and all we're doing here is copying by reference, all right? So how do we do this? How do we make it simple? So we actually, in the Python API, is Chris Fox here? He was the original author of this, or if you know Chris, he introduced I would say a higher level API method called clone items. And what this does is it sort of helps you copy items more efficiently between 2 portals. So instead of worrying a whole lot about getting the item description and all of that behind the scenes, we have a method that encapsulates a lot of that for you, okay? So there's a method called clone items. It's on the portal.content. So if you ever want to look at the help for any of our methods, I don't know how familiar you are with Jupyter Notebooks, but you can run a dot question mark, and this will sort of open up the method description as well as a more detailed description of all the parameters and things like that. All right, so that's cool. So what we're going to do is clone this item. All right, so just to make sure I'm not giving you a whole lot of smoke and mirrors here. All right, so right now I don't have much going on here. I got a few notebooks that I own. I got a folder with nothing in it. All right, so that's what I have right now. All right, so let's go ahead and clone that image service. All right, now I'm going to tell it to say copy data equals true. And if we go look at that parameter, that specifically means copy all the data behind the image service and move it over. Well, because this is an image service, even if you say true to that, it's not going to do it. All right, so depending on the item type, it will just ignore that. If it was a hosted feature service, then that parameter would be valid. You would then decide if you wanted to copy the data or copy by reference. But I just put that in there to, make you kind of wish it would work. But all right, so we're going to copy this guy. So basically, what it's doing is getting all that item information. It's creating a new item in the source portal or in the target portal. And if I come back over here, and I do a little refresh, and sure enough, I have that image service now. Okay. And so my portal is that DNS. It might be hard to see, tech tx SSL. But if I go in to look at this item description, you will see that the URL to this guy points back to my source portal. So this was a copy by reference situation. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's something that may be acceptable. Maybe there are other processes you need to put in place to move your map and image services. All right, so let's move on and talk about something else. Let's talk about specifically a hosted feature service. All right, so I have a hosted feature service of some Ebola treatment units, some sample data that I found in the West Coast area of Africa. So if I want to clone this guy, so I'm going to say target.content.clone and pass this hosted feature service. All right. So this will take a little bit longer because it's having to extract all that data out of that feature service, package it up, move it over, and then publish it as a new hosted feature service on my target portal, which is this one here. So we'll let this guy finish. It shouldn't be too much longer. Things are going well. It does not. Copy data equals true copy data is true by default. Okay? You would have to specify it to override it to be false. Question? Can you take it without? Yeah, you can say copy data equals false, and that will copy the item by reference just like it would the map service. Did it finish? All right, cool. So I got an item display back. So if I come over here and look at my content, so there, sure enough, I have my Ebola treatment units there. It is now a hosted feature service in this portal. All right. Is excitement level getting a little bit higher at this point? No? All right. All right, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. So in my target portal, I have a web map that has a hosted feature service in it. Everybody buying that, right? So I'm actually going to get a handle to the web map and copy it, all right? I'm also, it's also in a folder. If you come back here and remember the little hierarchy printout I did, what am I doing? Oh, web map of nursing homes. So I'm going to copy this web map, which is in a folder, all right? So that's cool. So, but this actually is doing something perhaps a little bit more. Oh, okay. All right, so I created a group in case it didn't exist. Now, I am copying the web map now, okay? I'm also applying a little bit of sharing to it. You can either, change the sharing or do whatever. I'm just giving you some examples here. So what it's doing right now, which is interesting, is I got to refresh the page. One thing it did for me is it also automatically created a folder in this user because it was in a folder from the source. But it also copied the web map and the hosted feature service all at the same time. So the clone items is a little bit of a sophisticated method that if you pass it a web map, it will then go and find all of the layers that are loaded in that web map and copy all of those as well. If it's a hosted feature service, it will copy the data for those and publish them. If there are map services or things like that, it will copy those by reference. All right, so that just kind of helps with your code. You know, just pointing at one item and it will kind of try to propagate and pull everything across. Quick question. Yes, it will correct everything for you. So the web map, it's got that, you know, in the target portal, that feature service loaded into it. So it does all of that for you. All right, so that's cool. That's getting a little more exciting, right? Tough crowd, tough crowd. All right, these things aren't long, but now I got one more thing to show you. Now, let's talk about a web app. So this web app points to a web map, right? That's what web apps do. And that web map has hosted feature services in it. All right, so I'm going to handle to that web app, and I'm going to run this guide. So what's really cool here is that it's not only copying the web app, it's copying the web map and all the hosted feature services along with it. So the cool thing about this is if in your dev environment, let's say you get a web app set up, you get all your pop-ups right, you configure your app, your web, get your web map right, your hosted feature services, and once everything is good, you could then use this clone items to actually copy all that configuration at once. So so that's pretty cool. You know, we built in some logic there to try to make this clone items method pretty broad to cover a number of things. So let's wait for it because there's a lot of things going on to get this guy over there. Shouldn't take much longer. Come on. Yes, question. I can't hear you. There's too much noise in this place. Oh, so like, let's say I try to copy again, and there's a hosted feature service. I've already copied it. It actually knows that. It will actually check to see if a hosted feature service with that name and everything already exists, and it will not use it. It will assume that the one that's already there is the one to use. Now, I believe there is a parameter. So let me come back to that. Let me finish up on this question here. I might need you to come to the booth to get an exact. Yeah, I think there's a. All right, so there's a parameter called search existing items. I'm not sure if the default is false or true, but that parameter will help that situation. I forget exactly the default value for it. All right. All right, so now if we go back, we got a result down here. It looks like it spit out some stuff. So sure enough, back in my content, let's do a little refresh. No, that's not it. I got a Molly folder now. I got a web app. I got 2 hosted feature services. This web map has 2 layers in it. And these layers are local to this guy. So those have all been copied correctly. And, in theory, if I open this guy up, I don't know what's going on there. Why did that happen? I got some kind of DNS redirect problem. This should open. Man, this will be a real big spoiler at the end here. I have this portal being used for like 3 other workshops, so man, that's a bummer. All right, let's just assume it worked. It's trying real hard. Oh, come on. Let's go back to the happy page. Let's go. It works. I know what happened. That was my fault. I misconfigured something for another workshop. But it does work. It copies it all over. It corrects the web map ID. It's got those layers loaded into it. And so life is good. So unfortunately, we're about out of time. What else can you do with Clone? Well, lots of stuff. You can copy portal skinning, like the banner and description and all that, if you want to make things look identical. Portal admin kind of stuff you can set up as well. And don't forget, this works between portal to portal, portal to online, and things like that. Survey 1, 2, 3. I don't know. That's a good question. Go ask these guys right here or come see us right here at the booth. Once that continued improvements to Clone, we're trying to do stuff. We are trying to create a export option as a part of this. So you export a whole bunch of stuff to disk, and then you maybe take that to a different network, to a disconnected portal or something like that, and be able to bring it all in. So that is something we're trying to do. And anything with the Python API or Jupyter notebooks, please post issues out on their public Esri GitHub for this project where the samples and stuff are. We monitor that and try to get back to you the best we can. All right, question. I think you were there first. Yeah, no, you do not get the same item ID. In distributed collaboration, it does do that, if you didn't know that. But this is creating new IDs, and it tries to correct for all of that.
So if you do that search items thing.
Search for existing items, yep.
For existing items, and you have services that are map services, image services, feature services that are not posted, that are already on your portal. Is it smart enough to figure out if they're the same? How's it doing that search for
The question is, how smart is that search for existing items? See us afterwards. We'll get to the bottom of that. I don't know how smart it is, to be honest. I know for like hosted feature services, it does a pretty good job with that. I'm not sure about map services and image services and things like that. So please see us. Please come ask that question. Let me go here first. I know she... Yes. So the question is there any plan to move like this concept into the product as a whole? And the answer to that is yes. We are planning to create tools and processes that allow you to move entire contents from one portal to another, or move portals from one domain, or changing a server name, or changing IP addresses from one server to another. That we recognize, we hear that from customers a lot. We realize that's a difficult task. Is it going to be in 10.7? No. Is it in 10.7.1? Probably not. But we are working on it. Let me go to her first.
I just wanted to say that it's really good at like the hosted services. It knows when those are there.
Okay.
It knows when the maps are there.
Yep.
Like a story map. We haven't done
Right. This doesn't answer all the questions by any means, because there are some item types that aren't supported for this method yet. We're working, gradually to build this out even more, but yeah.
I just wanted to ask this, you mentioned it, and also before you in here, notebook server 10.7, what is the timeline for 10.7 release?
10.7 release is supposed to be, I've heard, towards the end of this month, early next month.
Oh, not like July?
10.7?
Yeah.
Oh no, that's within a handful of weeks. Because I work in dev, we've handed off 10.7 to the release team, so we're done. We're done with that, and I think end of the month maybe, because we plan to try to hit 10.7.1. I don't know if I'm supposed to be spewing this out. 10.7.1 by the UC is kind of a internal goal at this point.
I just thought I'd rather have all the things you mentioned in 10.7 than deploying 10.6 whenever.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. You can. Does it support geoprocessing services? It will copy it by reference, which. If, it won't copy the GP service and republish it. It'll just copy it by reference is all. Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't.
Share with us the notebook, the sample.
Can I share it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this will be on air public. We post all of our Dev Summit talks on this repo. They'll all show up there, and we'll post these notebooks and everything probably within the week. So if you go there, there's a folder called Talks. You'll see like User Conference 2018, Dev Summit 2018. All of our notebooks and Python API stuff we'll put underneath there real soon. I think also as part of the Dev Summit in general, they make stuff available as well. Yes, sir.
Is all this in 10.6 where you just showed us?
This is all. Well, I'm using Notebook Server 10.7, but this is all supported in Python API 1.6, 10.6. Yeah, there's nothing unique to 10.7 here in terms of the code. All right. Well, visit us at the booth. We're around all week. Yep.